clings to the surface of the sea underneath, if that makes sense, and then gets blown around by the wind and currents, and that's how it finds its food. More of which we'll come on to later because it's quite interesting. But that's Glaucus atlanticus, just an incredibly beautiful creature. It's about 30 millimeters across, if you're wondering about scale. That's something you may well have seen on our shores this past year. Portuguese man of war. It's become quite common as a sort of blow-in. Very interesting creature as well. And again, I'm showing you these because A, I think they're incredibly beautiful, and I keep encountering things like this all the time, which I just find fascinating. But B, there is method in the madness, which we'll get onto later. Okay. Those beeps mean computer says no. Okay, great. So this is an image from Pembrokeshire in South Wales, which was taken about 4 years ago when I was on a short break with my family. And at the time, my head was kind of all over the place with a lot of environmental things going on, and I was involved in sort of commerce and business development. And whilst I found it fascinating, there was a sort of yearning to get back to nature a bit more. So on this beautiful fine day in South Wales, I was out for a morning jog, and I kept coming across these piles of, I'd seen all this before, 25 years before in Patagonia, but it was only this time it really needled me and really got under my skin. And I guess the timing was right, because literally there and then, as I took this photo, I made a promise to myself that enough was enough, and I was going to dedicate my time and my energy in any way that I could into tackling this problem, because I just found it completely unacceptable that even in a national park of the scale of Pembrokeshire, that every cove and nook and cranny was full of plastic detritus like this. So that's when the decision was made, and I went back and told my wife that I was going to buy a boat and start picking up plastic along the coast, and that was that. I don't mean that was that, she's still with me, but that was how that decision was made. The next few slides are quite distasteful, I'm afraid. So if any of you are upset by this sort of thing, perhaps look away. But I think it's incredibly important to be real about this problem. It is a global epidemic, of a different kind of thing, and it's a tragic problem. And it again, the more I've learned since I started, it's just bewildering and staggering, the scale of this problem. We all know the figures, the 10 million tons of plastic a year that enter the oceans, but and we see these images flashing across our screens quite regularly, but honestly, it really, I never tire of seeing them, because it just motivates me more to do something about it. And all these problems are solvable. That's what's so annoying. That's what's so frustrating. And some of them are it's just bad policy or bad practice or just laziness on the part of some industries, and a lack of will to find a better way. So that's, obviously a beautiful gannet, our largest seabird. They often pick up this stuff, which is called dolly rope, which is what's used to protect the leading edge and the cod end of trawl nets. And it's sacrificial. It's designed to come away. So it's designed to protect the net from abrasion, so the fishing industry don't waste millions of pounds on new nets. Yet it's perfectly acceptable to shred this off into the ocean as an alternative to ruining the nets. So there's method in the madness. It makes perfect sense to protect the nets. Of course it does. They used to use cowhides and things in the past. But this stuff's, I guarantee that any of you who've been on a beach clean or walk your dogs or whatever on the foreshore, on the strand line, you will find endless amounts of either blue or orange single strands of dolly rope wrapped around everything. It's often on the strand line in the bladder rack and what have you, but it's everywhere. Up in the Northern Isles, gannets and other seabirds use this as nesting material. They get tangled up in it. And there's images online which are much more harrowing than this of adult birds being strangled and hanging next to their nests where their chicks are waiting their next meal. It's absolutely shocking, and it's preventable. Turtles caught in trawl nets, another all common feature of the oceans. This is the one that really gets to people. We take these slideshows into schools, and obviously we have to be careful and warn the youngsters what's coming up, but that's the one that really did it for me. And I still can't believe there's people out there who haven't seen these images before. That's not a piece of art. That's a real photo of a real bird, and that's the real contents of its stomach. that was lovingly fed to it by its mother in ignorance, having picked it up off the surface of the ocean mistakenly as food. And that's the sad reality. They die of malnutrition. They starve to death because their stomachs are full of plastic instead of what should be in there. And that, I'm afraid, is a shot taken just a couple of months ago in Brixham. That was just lolling against the slipway, and that sticker, ironically, was where it is now in that photo. And I don't need to say any more about that, really. So another thing that I find fascinating, and it's an interesting one, you're finding sea creatures like these which are adopting floating plastics as their home. And I know lots of you have, and there's loads of photos online. Lots of creatures like this are finding plastic a very useful place to base themselves. And instead of hanging on to driftwood and other natural items, they're now sort of colonizing plastic, which is kind of interesting. I don't know. Obviously, it's not a good thing, but you question whether it's a terrible thing either. At least it's providing them a home, and it's unlikely to break down anytime soon. So yeah, maybe that's a question for later on. So here are some images. In fact, these are all local. Again, these are examples of what we're finding day in, day out. You guys will be familiar with them. And it just goes to show that everybody's culpable. It's very difficult to discern blame. It's very, very difficult to tackle people head on, because it's such a complicated process. That's what I found in my experience anyway. It'd be great to hear what you guys are finding out, on at the coalface as well. But yeah, I mean, this just goes to show the brands involved are global. You've got things coming across the oceans from afar. You've also got, our most local, most beloved local brands who are unfortunately, involved in this one way or another as well. And of course, it won't be by design by any means, but the sad reality is the items are still ending up in our SSSIs and our AOMBs and our beloved waterways, and they're still entrapping creatures and ensnaring things and entering the food web. So yeah. Some more local scenes. This is on the Kingsbridge Salcombe Estuary, one of the areas we first went to, very seldom visited. It's very hard to get to across mud flats. The boat's ideal for getting there, but just the scale of the litter was, when we first started here, was amazing. We just couldn't believe it. It's not a big place, but we've literally taken tons, thousands of kilos off the estuaries locally, and it's just incredible, and it keeps coming back, as we all know. So hopefully this is a little time-lapse video from a couple of weeks ago, in fact a couple of days ago, down at Sawmill Cove in South Devon by the hotel. A bit of a backstory: there's been a huge tractor tire wedged in this cave at the bottom of the cliff, and it's been there for well over 3 years, because I've been trying to get it out for that long, and who knows how long before that. And you could see behind it that there was tons of other stuff that we couldn't get to because the tire was in the way. But I went down to check the other day on the off chance, and sure enough, the storms had moved it a little bit and shifted around the rubble at the bottom. And actually, I could start to move it. So with a bit of tugging, etc., I'd managed to get it out, and then subsequently behind it. And hopefully this will start, and you can see for yourselves. We've literally had teams of people involved in trying to get this out. It was just kind of a fascination for us. And yeah, we couldn't budge it. And this cave, it's only a small cave, but this completely full. Probably around 200 kilos, I estimated, of stuff. So there you go. I didn't cycle to the beach. I just wore my cycle helmet to stop the cave ceiling from doing me any damage. The great news is that we work with the National Trust locally, increasingly actually, which is brilliant. And the team who are based just above Sawmill will come down to the slipway in a Land Rover, and they'll take this up to the roadhead, from where we'll take it back to our depot for sorting and dispatching to various places for for future use. So that's a bit of a fun success story. So some more images of what we found locally. This is a beach just around from Brixham, Scabacum, again, a National Trust owned property. So the public have helped clean the back of the beach, but they couldn't get down to the Land Rover. So we've been in our boat a couple of times to retrieve all this, which has been, just great, improves the value of the boat. These are things you may see along the coast and experienced yourselves, big sort of rope bergs, all manner of different material wrapped up together. This one's wrapped around a chainmail fence, interestingly, but kind of in a good way. These things act as a catalyst and everything seems to wrap around them. And it acts as a sort of focal point and it ends up coming ashore together. So I think in some respects, it's a blessing in disguise, but that's about 90 kilos, that lot. So folk often ask, what is Till the Coast is Clear? How is it set up? How is it incorporated, etc.? So I thought I'd just quickly cover that off because it's important to understand. So we decided to incorporate it as a social enterprise or a community interest company, which differs to a charity in so far that we don't have a board of trustees, and we are, in theory, we could be a for-profit business, but we're more commonly known as a non-profit company, which isn't strictly speaking the case because it is a business. Therefore, in theory, you could run it so that a profit was part of your ambition. However, most organizations, CICs, social enterprises are run as not-for-profits in the sense that any surplus that is generated has to be legally put back into the organization or distributed to other organizations doing the same thing, or charities for that matter. So it's also limited by guarantee rather than by shares. There's no shareholders, there's no dividends payable. It's legally bound to deliver what we've set out to do, both environmentally and socially. And as I said, surpluses are reinvested and we're audited annually by HMRC and Companies House. So there's nowhere to hide. What it gives you is huge flexibility in where your funding options come from, in that you can operate to some extent like a charity, so you can fundraise in the traditional way, but you can also work with businesses and you can also apply for grants, etc., which gives you a huge amount of flexibility. So that's the route we chose to take, and I'm pleased we have because it's proven to be the right one for us. So we're a community interest company. So right back at the beginning, when I first described what I was hoping to do to friends and family, they sort of they said, "Sounds great. I don't really know what you're on about, but go for it." So it was interesting. I had a few conversations with potential sponsors and partners, and I could see them kind of getting it, but not quite getting it. So it was probably my lack of ability to explain it properly. However, I did have a think about it, and I was out shopping with the kids one day, and I saw this in a toy shop window, and I thought, that's what we need. So we got it. The kids built it, and we just stuck some branding on it, etc. And it was just meant to be fun, a graphic way of describing what we were trying to do. And sure enough, the first meeting I went into, I didn't say anything. I just dumped that on the table, and they immediately got it and said, "I immediately want to be part of this." So it just goes to show that if one way doesn't work, try another, and adding a bit of fun and reality to it seems to work. You might notice the turtle with the cling film wrapped around his neck in the bow of the boat there. So this is a picture of Richard Marsh, who I've put up here because he's the guy on the left-hand side with the litter picker. I'm mentioning Richard because he was the first guy to agree to partner with us, and they became our key first sponsor, which was obviously crucial because I'd gone out and bought the boat on a credit card and then went out to try and sell the idea to partners and sponsors. So Richard was fantastic. He immediately got it. He immediately wanted to be part of it. It made perfect sense for his business, Coastal Recycling, based in Exeter, and they've been supporting us ever since. So yeah, I just wanted to mention those guys. There's a couple of Exeter Chiefs there in the boat. You might recognize them. So we had a day out with those guys. They were brilliant, just fantastic guys, really modest, weren't flashy, weren't showy. They just wanted to help, and they did. They got stuck right in, and they just disappeared and came back with tons of stuff. So yeah, it was a pleasure to have them on board. So we've got other partners now, and I'm not showing you these for any other reason, just to say thank you to them and just to explain how our model works. So we have a sponsorship model, basically. So we basically provide the opportunity for these organizations to be involved with what we do in a positive way. And I guess you could say the payback for them is being able to share the news of what we're doing with their customers and partners, etc. So we're obviously very choosy about who we work with. So, and yeah, and these guys at the moment are who we work with, and there's been lots in the past as well. Far too many to put on a slide like this, but yeah, our gratitude goes out to all of them, and it's a good way of doing it. So here's our trusty workboat. So this is Coast Clear 1, and you can see how it works. The branding's on the side of the boat from all those organizations you just saw, and yeah, it's a great bit of kit. It is made of plastic. Unfortunately, it's not made from recycled plastic, but it is completely recyclable, which I think is a key point. It has a drop-down bow door, which makes the job so much easier in these waters, and so it acts as a landing craft, very flat bottom, very maneuverable, and it really is a great bit of kit. And you know, talking about plastics, you can't talk about plastics and moan about the nuisance that they are without also acknowledging that they're incredibly useful and incredibly hard wearing. And I can't imagine a piece of kit being made of anything else as practical. And it's about what happens to it at the end of its life that's crucial, of course, and not to mention the manufacturing methods and everything else. But I think there's a lot of good news ahead regarding the use of these things and these plastics. But I'm not an expert, I hasten to add. But anyway, that's our workboat, and we put it to good use, and there it is in action. These are the early days. This was over at Hope's Nose in Torquay, and we helped the Torbay Cleaner Coast Initiative clear up a huge pile of stuff that, unfortunately, the guys who go fishing there at weekends, they just have parties. They have tents, barbecues, a lot of beer, and they just get up and walk away. They just leave it all there. They take the fish, leave all their discarded tackle and line and hooks and everything lying around, and they just literally get up out of their chairs and leave the chairs there and everything else and go. It's absolutely bizarre. But I know some of you guys know all this already, but there you go. So more shots of the boat. Sometimes I just strand it and spend a few hours walking the foreshore and wait for the incoming tide. It's always lovely to do that. It's just so quiet and peaceful. You see the whole cycle of the flood and ebb of the tide. It's a privilege. Again, just demonstrating how practical it is, how useful it is. Good friend Bill from Canada, who came over on a holiday, so I roped him in to help out. And so the way that it works at the moment is we move the boat around a lot because it's trailerable, it's quite light, so we tow it from venue to venue. We've got a few preferred launch spots because we're familiar with them. But we kind of use it as a skip, to be honest. We just fill it up with plastic and then hitch it up and take it back to the depot. It seems to be the most efficient way of doing it. We do leave it on the water now and again, certainly in Kingsbridge and Salcombe, where there's always work to do. We have a mooring there. But this is the kind of thing we take back to the yard and offload. And that's how that works. That was an image from the River Dart with some good friends who came out to volunteer for the day. And again, that was all in one small area. We filled up the boat that day. Another shot from Scobbicon Sands, I believe. And that's typical of the stuff we'd end up with back at the yard. So we don't sort it on the foreshore because there isn't time, and basically you've got a limited amount of time between tides to do the best you can, and it's best, I find, to get it back to the yard where we've got space and time to go through things there, which we do to a degree, because obviously it's pretty complicated, as you can see. Much of it is contaminated, it's covered in seaweed, it's dirty, there's lots of dog poo bags amongst it, generally speaking. And if you asked a recycling expert what's of any value within that lot, I think if they were being brutally honest, they would say practically nothing. Having said that, there is value in it, and if at the very least, if only for folk to take away as a story, I mean, there's value in that on its own. lots of artists now use it to make a point their way about ocean waste and plastics. So there is value in it in that respect. But turning this back into something useful is a devil of a task. It's very labor intensive and it's expensive, especially compared to the very low price of virgin plastics from crude oil. So that's kind of the battle. So yeah, more scenes. This whole area has changed now. There's about 4 tons of plastic at the yard at the moment. And I was there today, but I forgot to take a picture, so I do apologize. This was early days. This was just one load, out of the boat. So we're way behind the times here. So Coastal Recycling, as I mentioned, are key partners in recovering resources. So reallocating the resources if possible. So we have a sort out at the yard with our teams of volunteers. And then what's clearly contaminated and of no use to anyone, we just have to accept needs to be disposed of properly. That goes to Exeter via a skip with Coastal Recycling. And from there, they put it through their systems well there and extract any value. And unfortunately, anything that's not of any use then gets trucked down to Plymouth to MVV incinerator. So waste to energy, which I know is contentious. I know it's not everyone's idea of a perfect solution, and it certainly isn't. But from what I've learned and seen and experienced, it's certainly better than burying it in a big hole in the ground. So I think my opinion on that is that whilst we're still content to use coal and fossil fuels and oil to heat our homes, then burning some of the waste that we're producing on a ludicrous scale is probably justified. There we go. That was the first skip that went off to Coastal Recycling quite a few years ago now. This is just a couple of pictures from the operation at Kenneford in Exeter. So as we all know, it's a huge undertaking. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of tons of material coming through here. And if anyone's in any doubt about where their recycling goes, you can always be assured that the intentions are always absolutely good. They absolutely are. When there's value in the material, and that's dictated by world markets, like everything else, the guys often have to stockpile cardboard, paper, as they wait for the world prices to change in just the same way as oil and gas bond brokers do as well. It's a commodity like any other. So these guys, as profit-making businesses, need to wait for the prices to be right. And if they're not right for any prolonged period of time, you will find that it's a massive disincentive to them want to pick up more recycling, and then the problems start to escalate, unfortunately. And one of the big issues in the bottom right-hand corner, you can see, I think I'm right in saying that shed there is where contaminated waste goes. So a truck will come in, it will be visually inspected, and everything that comes into this site, in theory, should be recyclable. That's one of the biggest sheds on the site, and that's full of contaminated waste. It's waste that in theory could be recyclable, and you could pick through that and find plenty of stuff that's good for recycling, relatively valuable stuff. But because it's contaminated to the extent that it would take too much manpower or machinery time to sort, the only option is for it to go from that shed into that truck and straight down to MVV in Plymouth. So again, it's kind of putting the onus on us. The first line is obviously us, and the more separated, the better separated it is, and the less contaminated it is, the better for the whole system. But again, it's very complicated. I'm not an expert, and I'm sure you guys have got more experience and more knowledge, and it'd be very interesting to hear your views. So what's next for us? We've got lots of things in the pipeline, actually. It's been very interesting. Now, whilst our focus will absolutely remain on clearing up the less accessible parts of the coast and working to prevent it at source, which of course is logical in that we don't want to be doing this forever, we do have our fingers in quite a few pies at the moment, which is fantastic, and it's very interesting. So first and foremost, of course, when we can return to some sense of normality as far as getting out into the public domain again, like all of you, I'm looking forward to interacting with the public and friends and loved ones. And we used to do a lot of this sort of thing before COVID, and it was brilliant. It was really worthwhile. It would be really good fun. It's proper hands-on. People really get it when it's right in front of them. And we would take the boat, take some plastic, and just just stand and talk to people. And there was huge value in that, and it was really enjoyable. And people would get quite emotional, and they were very surprised when you told them that they'd ask where the material would come from, and you say, well, it's come out of the River Dart last week, and they'd go, they just genuinely couldn't believe it. And I still have that now. So yeah, great thing to do. Yeah, we've been working with corporates and schools for the last 2 years. So we do days for organizations that want to spend some time outdoors, you know, call it team building if you will. But basically it's a cleanup operation, coupled with, you know, just getting together, having some fun, getting some fresh air, and it works. It's magic. It's fantastic. We've had some great events with some great organizations, and obviously working with the youngsters is brilliant. So much enthusiasm, so much knowledge, and they genuinely do care. So yeah, that's kind of how we set up when we go to an event. All good fun. So a big focus and a big, you know, again, it's been a learning process, of course, but understanding, you know, how we need to transition from a linear to a circular economy has been a revelation to me. And I consider myself to be reasonably well read on all this, but even so, there's so much great positive stuff happening now. And the MacArthur's organization, for example, was a shining example of the effort and commitment and investment that's going into changing from linear to circular models of economics. And I think it's exciting, really exciting. And on an individual level, we can play such an important part in this when we consider that every single one of our consumer purchases, decisions, you know, has a knock-on effect. And if it's empowering the linear economy rather than a circular, then it's not necessarily money spent in the best way it could be. So my sort of trick, and I make no bones about it, I'm a consumer, you guys are all consumers, and it's a matter of being conscious consumers, I believe, in that, you know, everybody likes a new bit of kit. We all need things to function and do our jobs and live comfortably, etc. And I don't suggest for a moment that needs to change, but lots of things do need to change. And I think if we do consider what we're buying each time we buy something, just ask yourself the question: what's the lifespan of this bit of kit? It's cheap for a reason. You know, how long do I need it to last? As the person who made it thought about the end of its life, you know, what's going to happen to it then? All these questions you can ask yourself at the point of purchase almost. And I found myself putting a lot of things back on shelves, or you know, going online, looking at who made it, looking at where it's made, looking at how it's made and everything else. And you can learn an awful lot just by being interested in that. And naturally, the best thing we can do is to empower the good guys, power the small, caring organizations. And there's a lot of great stuff happening. There really is, in every sector of commerce, across all industries. There's makers coming back. There's people with their hands on materials again. There's things that are made to last a lifetime and to be passed down. There's good options. Yeah, so that's a good way to go. So the Dolphin Project is a really interesting one. This has taken some time to get off the ground, and it's been basically floored by COVID, because it was very reliant on local participation and hands-on. But the very quick idea is to take this old diesel-powered motor cruiser, which we kind of inherited into the project, and to turn it into a clean solar-powered open launch that will be basically owned by the community. And it will be used as an educational vessel on the Salcombe Kingsbridge estuary. It'll be used for immersive experiences to get new groups of people out into the outdoors, onto the water, and immersed in nature, which I strongly feel is one of our main ways of tackling the sort of inertia that's out there for wanting to look after what's around us. So we have to basically get as many folk involved, or we have to get as many people to selfishly feel how great nature is and what it does for them as individuals, and how great it makes them feel, and you know what cold water can do to you, and what a run on the cliffs can do for you, and all these things. Many of us take it for granted. So many folk who even live in Kingsbridge, Plymouth, Torquay, they haven't been to the beach. This is a fact. I know. I've done some research. There's families and children who live within miles of our coast who haven't been to the moors and haven't been to the beach, or haven't walked along an estuary or seen any bird life. It beggars belief, but it's true. So this project here is, we hope at least, will remove any barriers that are considered to be there, financial or otherwise, and hopefully get more people out on the water. But it's a slow burn, and there's lots to be done. More trees. I know this is very fashionable right now, but it's definitely something we aspire to do. We're saving up. We're fundraising to try and buy some land, and we're going to smother it in trees and make it open to all its stakeholders, and hopefully so they can go and use it as a camping space, as a place to go and have a campfire and whittle sticks and throw stones at each other if they want to, that sort of thing. But I just feel there's not enough space where you can do that. Every bit of land's owned, so and normally there's a sign saying keep off. So I'd like to kind of flip that and say, right, we can give a few acres over to folk who are going to treat it with respect and use it for the right purpose. Let's give it a go. So that's a pipe dream and a long way from fruition, but we're going to go for it nonetheless. So what can we do? I just chucked these things down. Obviously, working together, staying focused, collaborating is crucial. And as I keep saying, hopefully you're recognizing a theme that I'm saying. There's so much positive stuff. I'm blown away every day by, the people I speak to and the organizations I'm coming across and people who get in contact. There's so much great stuff, so much goodwill, so much positivity out there that I really can't see us failing. There's no going back to business as usual, which is an overly used term, but it fits. So yeah, I think there's so much to be positive about, and things are definitely changing for the better. And going back to that, every decision we make as individuals is crucial. I'm trying to think circular in everything we do. And one thing I think it was a kid at one of the schools, said, yeah, everything we do, if everybody else did it, which is kind of what happens, there's 9 billion people doing the same bad thing, and think of the knock-on effects of that. So I kind of use that now to sort of upscale. If I'm thinking of buying something or doing something or throwing something away or not recycling when I could, if you times that poor behavior by 9 billion, it starts to have a bit of a frightening effect. And as I mentioned before, purposely try and empower the guys, the small startups, guys who are, working with their hands, people who are taking stuff, and adding value to it, not the mass-produced tap that we all sometimes fall victim to, and unplug from the bad guys. I mean, basically, if you're spending a couple of quid with an organization with millions of customers and they don't care, and that's evident from everything they do, then don't give them the benefit of your pound. I just think that's the most powerful way of giving these guys the message. And as ever, action speaks far louder than any other. So, it's just a matter of getting stuck in and doing something about it. Sorry, just going back, one thing that I must mention that we're very excited about is we're linking up now, and this has been the ambition from the start, with social prescribing groups and also the Devon and Cornwall Police's Pathfinder scheme. And that's their restorative justice scheme, whereby they give people who have committed minor misdemeanors the opportunity to go down the alternative route to court and potential prison sentences. So they can basically choose to do something in the community, or they can choose to go down the traditional route of a judge and all of that. So I'm very excited about this because, again, it's opening up what we do and to a whole different user group. And we're going to hopefully start having folk come out with this, within a month, because it will be on a small scale and manageable. So that's fantastic. And social prescribing, for those uninitiated with that, is when a GP recognizes that one of his patients, would really benefit from having something positive to do out in the outdoors, or his or her ailment may be improved massively with an intervention like simply getting outdoors, exercising, having some purpose in their day, and hanging out with some other people who are kind of doing the same thing. So it's a brilliant thing. It's been around for a long, long time, but now it's front and center of the NHS's ambitions to stop prescribing drugs unnecessarily, and realizing that most things are improved by applying some common sense and some good old-fashioned outdoor activity. So that's brilliant. That's two of the things I'm most excited about, actually. So going back to that brand thing, I mean, there's so many companies that do right by their employees, by the people who make things for them, and by their customers. And these are just a few that I download the logos off, if I'm honest. But there are a few of my favorites. We bank with Triodos. I can't recommend them highly enough. And if there's one single way of putting it to the bad guys, that's the best way. Put your money into a bank that invests in incredibly good, worthwhile schemes. Triodos are incredible, and it's I'm actually very proud that our tiny contribution that we make to them goes to good causes. I can't recommend them enough. And there's other banks like them, so you don't have just one choice. But yeah, if you're going to do anything of any real meaning, changing your bank has got to be right up there with the best things we can ever do. And it does empower really good stuff to happen, really good stuff. So have a look at that. Okay, so I hope for those of you who missed this at the beginning, these are the opening 2 slides, and I showed them to you because I just think they're incredible creatures, just utterly fascinating and beautiful. The Glaucus atlanticus, the sea slug, the dragon slug on the left-hand side is 30 millimeters wide. It hangs upside down in the ocean, as I mentioned. And we've got the Portuguese man of war on the right-hand side, which many of us have seen on our beaches this year. And if you've read already what's below it, I just think this sums everything up. And I still find it bewildering. A siphonophore, an animal made up of a colony of organisms working together, each adapted to perform a specific function for the benefit of the whole. They're all connected to each other and are unable to survive alone. And I just thought that neatly encapsulates everything, and it's surely how we should be behaving as a species. And there's one sting in the tail in this, though. As beautiful as the dragon slug is on the left, they actually predate on the Portuguese man of war. So they drift around in the ocean's currents and on the winds, and they eat those, and they actually absorb the nematocysts, the stinging cells from the Portuguese man of war, and store them as their own armory of defense and attack. So it's just a bewildering thing that nature is presented here, and I just love the way it all sort of meshes together and is a bit strange. So tread carefully, my friends. Leave nothing but footprints. Enjoy your time outdoors. And to anyone who goes out regularly and does their little bit, I take my hat off to you, and I think it's absolutely brilliant. And it's the key to keeping our coasts free of plastic, even if it's only on a South Devon local level. Who cares? We're making an enormous difference, all of us together. And we've got 4 or 5 tons of stuff at the yard, as I've said. You guys are all taking stuff out of the ocean every day, and things are gradually getting better. So keep at it, and we'll get there in the end. That's one of our little Wally thank you donation tins. So if you see one of those around, feel free to give it a rattle or stick something in it, perhaps. So thanks, guys. That's it as far as the slideshow goes. So it would be fantastic to hear from you. Any questions, any ideas, any concerns, or anything that you found to be of interest or perhaps controversial. It'd be great to hear from you.
Okay, thank you very much, Gary. That's such a positive and really informative talk. So there have been a couple of questions on the chat. So if you get your thinking hats on, Barry Matthews, do you want to unmute yourself and ask your own question, please?
Sure.
You can stay muted.
Let me say well done, Gary. Great presentation, really informative. I think you do a great job. You're a brilliant evangelist for the environment and protecting our beautiful coastline, a real champion. So keep up the good work. The question I had was, and I think it sort of, you can see it in the image there, there's an awful lot of fishing net and ropes. And I was wondering, who are the biggest contributors to the pollution? Is it just us as the general public need to change our behavior and be more responsible, or is there something we can do to change behaviors of fishermen and other local businesses, which presumably also contribute to the issue?
Yeah, sure. Thanks very much, Barry. It's a combination of all of those points. So inevitably, commercial fishing is a wasteful business. There's a lot of issues with the materials used, with some of the techniques that are still used. A lot of the stuff that's coming ashore now is historic. It's been in the water a long time. And let's not forget that 70–80% of what ends up in the water sinks. So most of the plastic that's coming ashore, we should almost be grateful of, because the rest of it's on the seabed, which is devastating when you consider how much we're pulling off the foreshores.
Yeah.
But the fishing industry is again, it's complicated, it's multifaceted, it's really tricky. I guess at the end of the day, us as consumers, as eaters of fish, we are empowering, we're providing the bucks that power that whole industry. So you could argue that the only way to slow it down or force change on it would be to boycott the product, which I don't think is necessarily practical or sensible or helpful. Although I'm sure there's people on the call who would disagree wholeheartedly with that, which I appreciate. But yeah, so it's very complex. I think the good news is there's lots of effort going into new technologies, i.e. that dolly rope stuff we talked about at the beginning. They're looking at new materials, biodegradable plastics, harder wearing materials, and different techniques that will do away with dolly rope once and for all. But again, it's slow burn, slow burn, and it's a cost thing. Dolly rope's so cheap, the alternatives are so expensive. So it's all driven by economics, as almost always. I think fishermen's behavior in general is improving massively, and that's in part because it's so visible now. They can't get away with it. I mean, there is no other source of this stuff. That's a piece of drift net. There's no arguing, that has come from a boat, whether by, fair means or foul, no doubt about it. And the behavior is improving hugely because there's schemes on shore now. For example, net regeneration, Rob Thompson's outfit, Fathoms Free, they have depots at most of the ports on the south coast now where fishermen can, at no cost to them, can put in their damaged or end of life nets, because there's values in nets when there's 4 or 5 tons of nylon involved, and that's what those guys use to then take to processing, turn back into pellets, make into kayaks, etc. So in building in some circularity there, which is fantastic. So now that they don't have to pay to get rid of their nets, which in the past they had to, and a net of that weight would cost them a couple of £100 to get rid of in a skip on shore, you can see why they used to just let it slip, chaps, over a reef or onto a wreck where they wouldn't trawl it up again themselves. So yeah, sorry, long answer, but it's complicated. Things are improving slowly, and yeah, fingers crossed. Of course, being conscious again about your consumerism, eating certain species of fish, be adventurous, don't just go for the common ones, go for the ones that are sustainably caught. Cuttlefish and Brixham, is the best stuff in the world, but we barely touch it. It all goes to Spain and France. Insane. There's things like that as well. So we can all help.
Great, thank you.
There's another question from Leah Old. If you'd like to unmute yourself, Leah.
Hiya, thank you for the really insightful presentation. I just wanted to know if you've seen a noticeable difference in the amount of plastic waste on the coast during the pandemic, and if you think people spending more time outdoors will make them more aware of the environmental problems.
Hello. Yes, I have seen a difference, for sure. I haven't seen a huge amount of PPE, which is kind of flies in the face of the evidence coming from other groups that I stay in touch with. We haven't found a lot of that sort of thing on the coast since lockdown. But unfortunately, I can't say we're finding any less. I think we're actually just finding more places where it is. It's not to say that any less is coming in. I suppose if you monitor the well-trod public beaches, which is where most folk understandably go for their constitutional every day, then there's a noticeable difference on the strand lines of those beaches because everybody's having a go. It's brilliant. 2 minutes beach clean. I mean, what a fantastic organization and concept that is. And they've got, I think, 900 stations now around the UK. It's unbelievable and a huge success. So if you think there's thousands of people spending 10 minutes a day picking up litter off the strand line, it is making a huge difference. And a lot of people say, what's the point? A lot of people do say, what's the point whilst you're doing it? And the answer is that if you don't do it, the plastic either gets taken back out on the next high tide, spring tide, or what I'm seeing all the time is it gets buried. And we're having to dig stuff up now. And certainly in the back of sand dunes and things, we're finding stuff that was buried a long time ago. And now the erosion's exposing it again. And we're finding, crisp packets and tablet holders from 40 years ago sticking out of the sand dunes at Thurlestone and things. So and also on the cliffs, cliff falls happen all the time, very dynamic. We're finding huge nets, buoys, stuff crushed under rock falls, and you can't get it out. You have to cut it out, and it's just not practical to do it. So it's so important to get it off when it arrives.
Thank you. We've just got time probably just for a couple more questions. Amy, we've got a question from Amy, if you'd like to unmute, if you're still there.
Hi, I am.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah,
hi.
Fab. Sorry, I'm all hidden because my child's still bouncing around. We do quite a lot of stuff on the shoreline, and I was just wondering what you consider kind of throwing away plastic, or collecting plastic, versus collecting marine life when it has been colonized, and where you kind of draw the line with that.
Yeah, what a great question. So are you saying if you found like a flip-flop like we had in the slideshow covered in goose barnacles, should you leave it or should you?
Yeah, exactly. Well, we found a shoe and a bottle, and obviously the bottle has its other kind of intrinsic risks to things.
Yeah.
And they were all colonized by really young goose barnacles. And I thought, well, I'll take the bottle, but I'll leave the shoe because the shoe is not too bad. And
yeah,
where's the line?
Yeah. What a great question. I mean, geez, I think the sad reality is if you throw it back in the sea, even on a receding tide, it's just going to come ashore again. Those things, they colonize out at sea, don't they? And I think storms bring them ashore and what have you. So it's a really tricky one. I've seen there's a log down at Sawmill Cove that had about £40,000 worth of goose barnacles attached to it, according to one estimation. And because none of us, they're a huge delicacy in Spain, people risk their lives trying to get them off the cliffs. But around here, of course, we have, we're pretty finicky about our seafood. Yeah. So it just went to waste, and they've all rotted off. And there's a beautiful log down there now. But that's going off the point a little bit. But yeah, I find plastic bottles like you have full of brown liquid, could be fuel, could be anything. So leave the top on, and it's covered in goose barnacles. I've left a few in rock pools and things, but the reality is the next big spring tide is just either going to smash it up against the back of the walls and put it into microplastic, and the creatures are going to. I think they're best considered food for the food chain. Seagulls will enjoy them. Perhaps take a few home yourself next time. Chuck them in a pan.
Right, Fab, thank you.
A question from Lou. I think we've got a few more minutes for people.
Hi. In fact, I've got two questions. The first one was, if I find a load of net or something else that's just too heavy for me to deal with, what should I do? If it's not I guess a National Trust beach, someone's going to get it sooner or later, but anywhere else, what should I do? Yeah,
thank you, Lou. That's a brilliant question. It was kind of supposed to be my closing gambit. So yeah, can I implore everyone that if you find anything that's unmanageable, or even if it's just not your, it's not your responsibility, and and it isn't, if it's contaminated or it's just too big, heavy, etc., please get in touch with us. I mean, we're so well resourced. We're so lucky. We've got 2 boats now in the water. We've got 4 kayaks. We've got a huge pool of volunteers, lots of experience. We've got power tools and hooks and ropes and all manner of things to help us get these things off the foreshore. So yeah, please don't struggle. Just give us a call and we'll get there as soon as we can. And we, like I say, we're very privileged. We're well resourced. We've got the backing of people who care, and we can get to places and get shot of it and get it off the coast and get it upcycled, hopefully. So yeah, that goes for anything: netting, barrels. Nets are the big thing. If you find a whole trawl net, that's a huge task. And it will go, if you leave it a day or two and it's on a spring cycle, then it will go out again, which is a disaster. So yeah, please let us know.
Yeah, great, thank you. The other question was, you were talking about there being places at various fishing ports where the fishermen can put their grotty old nets. Is there one at Brixham? Yes, there is, fortunately. Right. Yeah, there is, and it's pretty well used. Yeah, a lot of waste is coming off the boats now. The guys are much more conscious. In fact, that's one of the projects I did forget to mention. It's really bad that I did. We're doing a whole new project that started at the beginning of January in Brixham called Litter Free Seas, and that involves installing a sea bin, which is an automated litter collecting device. It's made in Australia, and it works 24/7. So you install it in the right place, and the prevailing winds and tides just enable it to draw floating plastic in, and it needs to be emptied every day. But it's a great bit of kit. So we're putting one of those in, and we're also putting a litter boom along the inner sea wall at Brixham, because all the
rubbish from the port gets blown by the prevailing wind into the wall, and it's a devil's job to get it out. So the sea boom, which will be made of stuff that we've already, upcycled, and some new kit, of course, will hopefully prevent it from going into the wall, and we'll be able to get hold of it much easier. And we're also making, hopefully, a life-size, to scale humpback whale, which will be a sculpture, a beautiful sculpture made of galvanized steel, but also a massive rubbish receptacle where all the stuff we recover out of Brixham Harbour will go. And the purpose of that is to raise awareness. And also there's nowhere to hide, because if you've got one of your fish boxes is in there and your boat's name's on it, one of your fishing nets, which is identifiable, is in the thing, then there's nowhere to hide. So we're hoping that the scale of what goes in that bin and the fact that it's visible is going to make people think twice about not doing the right thing.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you.
Okay, just a couple more questions and then we'll wrap up. Is Robin Blackledge, if you'd like to unmute.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, hi, Robin.
Oh, hi, Gary. Thanks, Gary. That was very inspiring talk, and I hope to hear lots more about your projects. My interest is from what you said about recycling is about whether you consider what you're taking day to day is of value, and in your process of separation, do you see it as valuable items that your collaborators have a financial comeback, or do you see it as that going back into your business as a financial comeback? Because I see it in my business. I have various heads that I put on, and sometimes I'll clear a building site of copper and wire, and also I have a neighbour who's incredibly inspiring, which she's disappeared through lockdown, and I hope she hasn't got very ill, but she's an amazing recycler in our area. She's for 30 years she's recycled aluminium cans, and from that she walks up and down the streets and collects them, and she's literally raised £40,000 over 5-6 years. She gives that to various places. So I think I'm trying to understand whether people have an awareness of the value of a certain material, and whether we could use that in other ways, in creative ways, to create more funds for our community. And that was one, just one question, whether you ever thought of that, whether a whole swathe of the southeast or southwest could actually contribute some aspect of their life, like copper wire, or even the small scooters of aluminium that kids use. People don't realize you can get a fiver back on them sometimes if you take them down the local recyclers. Sorry, I'm ranting a bit, but yeah, I'm just quite interested in your view on that, really.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's a great question. Yeah, there's definitely value in some of the items. I mean, we find big pieces of rope and net and lots of buoys, and we hope to have a sort of yard sale in the summer whereby people can come by and buy items and put them back into circulation and use them again, and obviously that will help our coffers a little bit as well. But it takes it out of the system. It won't have to go to recycling or incineration, which is brilliant. It gets put back into use. So yeah, quite a bit of the stuff is in fact, I think my house is held up with things I found on the coast. So yeah, there is value in it. There's no doubt about it. But it goes back to what I said before. It's about the incentive, the economic, realities of cleaning material and preparing it for reuse. Now in our country, it's very difficult. In developing regions, it's much more practical, and there's some great work going on. There's huge organizations and investment. I think there's one called Plastic Bank, for example, that's empowering locals. They pay them a living wage, a half decent wage in good currency, to go and collect X kilos of plastic, and there's a fixed price on the plastic, and they take the plastic and put it back into use, and of course that person's engaged and has a paying role in doing all that. So there's some brilliant schemes out there that are scalable and are growing. But back here, I mean, the bottle deposit return scheme, if there was even a tiny incentive on every aluminium can, I grew up in Norway 40 years ago. We used to take everything back to the supermarket, glass, tin, aluminium. It went through a automated system on a conveyor belt, space age stuff back then. And you'd get a little receipt, take it to the till, exchange it for sweets or cash, and away you went, and everybody was happy. I mean, how difficult would it be to get that rolling. And that was in Scandinavia 40 years ago. That's how far behind we are. But there is value in all this material if it's in the right condition and the global conditions for that material are right, and everything else. So yeah, where there's muck, there's brass, as they say. And whenever you see one of those recycling, scrappy trucks, those guys are never short of a bob, I can assure you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm getting a bit of feedback that a few folk are quite keen to stay, but if anybody has to leave, please just gently leave. Are you good for a couple of questions there, Gary?
Yeah, of course. Thank you very much. Fire away. Yeah, I'm.
There's one from Lucy, I think.
Hi, Lucy.
Maybe not.
Right, I am now muted. Hello, thank you very much for a brilliant talk. I'm actually an interloper from southeast Cornwall.
What?
I'm an interloper from southeast Cornwall, although I did live in the South Hams for many years. Is there anything remotely similar for here, across the water?
Yes.
What you're doing?
Yes, there is. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can, yes.
Great. Yes, there is. There's loads of other great organisations in Cornwall. There's Beach Guardians on the North Coast. There's Fathoms Free, who they tend to specialise in recovering ghost nets from under the surface. So
I think I
yeah, that's Rob Thompson's outfit. They're phenomenal. I mean, they've been doing this for a long, long time. You know, they really are heroes. And they pulled out, tens of tons of ghost gear. I'm not so sure there's necessarily an organisation as practically resourced as we are with the boats and the kayaks and things, and doing it full time. So it'll be very interesting to find someone who was wanting to start a hub down in Cornwall, and I dare say we could get one going in short order, because it'd make perfect sense if it's in a similar area, estuarine area as this. Then there'd definitely be a call.
There's lots of coves and they've all got loads of stuff. You quite often see obviously huge nets dug into the sand, and they have always
again, please let us know. Whatever you find like that, please let us know. We're not by any means constrained to Devon. We can go.
Right.
We'll happily go to South Wales or north coast of the Southwest Peninsula, or Cornwall, because we can make a couple of days of it and make it worthwhile and justifiable with the
I'm literally just around the corner. I'm just over the river. I'm based in Saltash. So.
Oh, lovely. Well, actually, we were talking to the Rame Peninsula plastic guys today. They've got a big sort of navigation buoy on the back of a beach there. So yeah, I noticed it and said, hey, we can help for sure. So we're going to go down and try and sort that out with them soon.
Cool. Yeah. So, and we sail along the coast. So we're
great.
Quite often in a boat.
Yeah, fantastic. If you see anything adrift as well, let us know, and we'll definitely let the Coast Guard know or someone know, because it's a hazard to shipping as well as marine life. And you've got the British divers, marine rescue guys who are phenomenal, and they're very well connected. They've got volunteers all over the place with boats, and those guys would go out and get something for sure. So there is definitely help out there. It's probably not necessarily as coordinated as it could be.
No.
And that's something we could do better. We could definitely let all these guys know that we're very willing and able to help.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'll keep a lookout.
Yeah. Well, hopefully you won't see anything. But
well, hopefully.
I think you will.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. I think just one last question now from Tim. It has to be the last.
Oh yeah, well done, Gary. It's a good talk. Enjoyed that. True question time style. They have sort of a light-hearted, silly question at the end. I know you'll be good at fielding this. So, when doing your collecting, have you ever found anything that made you laugh or even blush? Be honest.
Yeah, laughing for sure, because you just have to laugh. Otherwise you'd become very glum indeed. You just have to laugh at the scale and the size of the challenge and the never-ending nature of it. So I do laugh to myself, ironically, about that. Blush for sure, because there's so many sanitary products on the foreshores, and it's no harm in mentioning it. It's normally applicators, the plastic applicators. When you're in good company and you can't help but they'll ask you what it is and you have to tell them, and that can be quite embarrassing. In fact, this is a good story. Thanks for prompting me, Tim. We did a little bit of thing with Countryfile on the Yelm, which was great fun. They were so cool. They were really good people. Anyway, we did a recce about a week before the presenters came down. And it was a beautiful day, flat, calm, sun, perfect tide. We went ashore on this beach, and one of the researchers was picking up stuff merrily. She goes, "Oh, I feel great." She goes, "Look at this. I'm finding lots of these." And I said, she goes, "What is it?" And I told her, and she went, "Ah!" and threw it back in the water. And that was hilarious. But that was products of that nature. And yeah. So yeah, it can be fun, can be funny, can be embarrassing. Yeah,
I think there's one last one from Sarah, and that would definitely be the last one.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Hello, thank you. I was getting concerned then that I wouldn't have a chance to get an answer. So I just want to say thank you so much, Gary and the team. It's just really inspiring to learn about everything that you're doing. Do you have any volunteering opportunities or any way that I could get more directly involved?
Yes, thank you very much. That's very kind. Yeah, we have, to be honest, one of our challenges is knowing what to do with all the well-meaning volunteers that we have. We do have, before COVID, of course, it was simple. If we were doing something, we'd let everyone know, and whoever could make themselves available would turn up, and that includes going out on the boats, includes doing work on foot, and all kinds of things, coming up to the depot and helping sort things out. So there was lots of opportunities before the dreaded. It's obviously more complicated now, although we are permitted, because this is my full-time work, I am obviously still able to engage with it as best I can. And we are also, in theory, permitted to have volunteer groups, helping out, because we're outside, would be socially distanced, and would be doing sort of, because it's very much a mental health, a physical benefit as well. So in theory, we could do more at the moment, I suspect, but I think it's just such a bit of a tightrope. You don't want to be seen to be being negligent or not taking things seriously. So it's kind of a tricky one to navigate. But when this is all over, then absolutely, please get in touch one way or another, by the website or whatever, and you can join the WhatsApp group, which we send out messages on. I.e., we'll be leaving on Friday morning, 9 a.m. from the pier. Join us if you can, or a more scalable beach clean somewhere. But increasingly, there'll be loads and loads and loads of things to do. And I dare say we'll also probably need some sort of admin help as well. We could be so much more effective if we had some more coordination and outreach and that sort of thing as well. So yeah, thank you very much for your kind offer, and hopefully we can link up somehow.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Gary, for really stimulating talk. As you can gather by all the questions that have been so enthusiastic, it's I think everybody's really appreciated it, and is fired up with enthusiasm to clear up the coast. And so just before we finish, I'll just put in a slight plug for our next few talks, which are ranging from quizzing our Member of Parliament, Gary Streeter, has kindly agreed to talk to us about environmental things, which should be interesting, and I'm glad I'm not chairing that one. And there's also some talks from some people of kind of, again, national sort of prominence, Cal Major, and there's, Maya, I've forgotten a second.
Maya Plass.
Maya Rose Craig, the brilliant.
Rose Craig, yeah. Well, sorry, what's that, Craig? Coral?
Maya Rose Craig, who's a bird girl and Black to Nature.
Excellent. So they'll be on Wednesday evenings, and the details are on Facebook. So thanks everybody for coming along, and I hope this has provided a really positive positive stimulus for you all on a positive day. Okay. Good night.
Thanks very much, guys. Thanks for having me.
Gary.
Take care, everyone. See you out there.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.